My husband loves sandwiches, so when he asked me to make him a Philly cheesesteak and French dip sandwich hybrid for his birthday this year, I made his sandwich dream a reality. Roast beef, sautéed onions, peppers and mushrooms, homemade beer cheese, and a flavorful beef jus to dip the sandwich in. And boy, was it delicious. So delicious, in fact, that I quickly wrote down everything I'd done so I could make it again. And I did make it again. And now I can share the recipe with you. If you love sandwiches and beef and cheese and stick to your bones hearty comfort food, I do think this sandwich is for you. The first thing you'll need to do is roast the beef. I do this low and slow in a crock pot overnight, so I always cook the beef just before I go to bed the day before I plan on making the sandwiches. So yes, it does involve some planning ahead, but the fun part is you get to wake up the next morning to the delicious smell of roast beef. Start with a 4-pound chuck roast. It's one of the cheapest cuts of beef and it's great for slow cooking. Heat a large skillet on high with a little dash of oil in it. While the pan is coming to temp, pat the roast dry and season it with salt. Once faint wisps of smoke are rising from the skillet, sear the roast until it is nice and brown on each side, then transfer it to the slow cooker. Then turn down the heat to medium and add a minced small red onion and a little salt. Cook, stirring occasionally to get those lovely brown bits off the bottom of the pan. When the onion is translucent, add 4 cloves of finely minced garlic and sauté for just a minute. Then add half a cup of white wine to deglaze the pan. Dump the onion, garlic, and white wine mixture into the slow cooker. Follow that up with a cup of broth, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a teaspoon of mustard powder, a bay leaf, and 2 teaspoons of whole black peppercorns. Turn the slow cooker on low, tightly secure the lid, set an alarm for 10 hours, and go to bed. The next morning, check the meat. You'll know it's done if you can stick a fork in it and it just falls apart. That's what we mean by fork tender. If for some reason it's not done, keep cooking it. But if it is done, turn off the slow cooker and go do your morning routine. About a half hour before you want to eat the sandwiches, this is when you'll prep the rest of the components. This recipe makes 6 to 8 sandwiches total, depending on how many rolls come in the bag. And even if I'm only going to eat 1 or 2 of the sandwiches right away, I go ahead and make the full recipe up front because it's more convenient, and these components are just as good leftover as they are freshly made. First, fish the beef out of the slow cooker. I put it directly into a large sealable container since most of it will become leftovers anyway. Then I strain the liquid the beef cooked in. You should wind up with about 2 to 3 cups of the stuff. And here I'm using my handy-dandy spoon that I've bent with the power of my mind to skim the excess fat off the liquid. If you have time, you can always refrigerate this liquid until the fat solidifies at the top and remove it then. Either way, once you've skimmed off the excess fat, what you've got left is going to serve as the jus for dipping your sandwiches. Now let's look at the condiments. Put a couple teaspoons of fat into each of the 3 skillets. I'm using rendered beef fat here for consistency's sake, as well as a couple chunks of fat that I removed from the roast. Never throw away your animal fat. It's delicious and it will save you money. In one skillet, I sauté a whole sweet onion, sliced. In the second skillet, 2 cups of sliced cremini mushrooms. And in the third skillet, 10 baby sweet peppers, sliced. I season them all with just salt and pepper, but of course you can add herbs and spices here if you'd like. Customize it. Once all the veggies are going, make a beer cheese. You can also make this beer cheese earlier if you'd like and reheat it. Here I'm actually using a beer cheese that I made 1 month prior and froze, but I'll show you really quickly how I made it. In a medium-sized pot on medium heat, melt 3 tablespoons of butter. Stir in 3 tablespoons of flour until it's a smooth paste. We call that a roux. Add half a cup of white wine, and yes, elephant in the room, it's supposed to be beer, but my husband doesn't like beer, so this is technically wine cheese, not beer cheese. Anyway, use what you like, or for a non-alcoholic version, you can use apple cider. Stir the mixture vigorously so there's no lumps. Add 1.5 cups of half and half, stirring and stopping a couple times to incorporate it smoothly. Then add 1 tablespoon each of brown mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and garlic salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and a tablespoon of dried parsley flakes. And here I'm using fresh, so I added twice that amount. Stir until everything's incorporated, then add 3 cups of shredded cheddar cheese and stir until the cheese is melted and everything is smooth. Add more milk if the sauce is too thick. To reheat leftover beer cheese, microwave on medium, stirring every 30 seconds or so until the sauce is smooth and creamy. It may look lumpy or curdled at first, but just give it a hearty stir and it should smooth itself out. To assemble your sandwich, line an opened hoagie roll with Swiss cheese, then toast it in a toaster oven or a regular oven at 400 degrees for a few minutes until the bread is crisp and the cheese is bubbly. Then fill your roll with beef, mushrooms, onions, and peppers, top it with a line of beer cheese, and behold its cheesy, steaky goodness. This is a rather messy sandwich, so I recommend you give yourself enough space to devote yourself fully to its juicy gloriousness. And like I said, this recipe makes 6 to 8 sandwiches total. But what if it's just you and a partner in your home? How do you deal with the leftovers? Here's how. I keep everything sealed in separate containers in the fridge. Then, when it's time to make a fresh sandwich, I put a line of beef, onions, peppers, and mushrooms on a small plate. Then I top it with a few spoonfuls of beer cheese in a row. I microwave that on medium for 3 to 4 minutes while my cheese-lined bread is toasting. Then I simply slide the contents of the plate directly onto the toasted roll and serve it with a small ramekin of reheated jus. And don't throw away your leftover jus, by the way. It makes an excellent beef broth in recipes, or you can add a cornstarch slurry or a mixture of equal parts flour and butter to thicken it into a gravy. Or you can always freeze it for later. Anyway, that was my French dip cheesecake. Anyway, that was my French dip cheese steak sandwich. It's quickly become a favorite in our home, and I hope it becomes a favorite in your home too. Thank you to my patrons for helping me pay for these ingredients, with special thanks to Chrissy, Britt, Honey Badgers, Megan M, Matthew, Jenny D, Robert Z, Meru, Jocelyn, Manila, Gina F, Megan B, Data Fox, Stacy, Gina S, Ruth, Katie, Lonesome Screams, Mihir, Morgan, Bid Fafo, Britta, Veda, Colette, Sandra, and Andrea.